In the heart of Oakville, a small town grappling with the weight of changing times, a courtroom filled to the brim with tension on a sweltering summer afternoon. Outside, the sun hovered insistently above a clear sky, its rays bouncing off the courthouse's red brick facade, casting long shadows across the pavement. The building, a fixture in Oakville since the late 1800s, had borne silent witness to countless stories etched into the annals of local history. Today, it was poised to add another chapter, a moment packed with more emotion and consequence than most could imagine. Inside, the air seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Rows of worn wooden pews were occupied by townsfolk eager to witness the unraveling drama. The room buzzed with a low hum of whispered speculation and the rustle of impatient bodies. Fans lazily stirred the air from above, offering scant relief from the oppressive heat. At the center of the swirling murmurs was the case of Naomi Bennett, a woman many in Oakville had known by name if not by face. Naomi, seated beside her lawyer, Mr. Owens, appeared a tower of composed strength, her back straight despite the significant weight resting on her shoulders. Beside her, Amara Bennett, her 10-year-old daughter, sat quietly, swinging her feet just above the floor, occasionally brushing aside one of her pigtails adorned with pink ribbons that matched her spirited nature. Her presence pulled the gaze of those nearby, for in her delicate hands, she held more than just the threads of her mother's fate. She carried the heavy hopes of proving the kind of woman her mother truly was. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom opened with a soft creak, and heads turned to watch the entry of Judge Simpson, an older man with a distinguished air, his robe trailing behind like a shadow. Years of service to justice had painted lines of solemnity on his face, yet his eyes betrayed a spark of curiosity, piqued not only by the legal acrobatics of the day, but also by the role of this small, unassuming girl before him. The room stood in a hushed respect until he settled into his seat, motioning for the proceedings to resume. Mr. Owens, a figure exuding quiet confidence despite his relatively modest stature, straightened his notes, nodding affirmatively toward Naomi. His gray eyes were sharp, missing nothing, as they darted over to Amara, offering a subtle, encouraging smile. Naomi returned the nod, squeezing Amara's hand softly, a silent communication of solidarity and trust. Outside the large, beveled windows, a flock of birds chirped exuberantly, darting through the courtyard's ancient oaks. Their song was a stark contrast to the solemn deliberations within, yet it carried a reminder of life's simple joys, perhaps an apt reflection of Amara's hopeful perspective amidst tumult. The prosecutor, Ms. Dalton, was already on her feet, a figure of professional ferocity, her suit immaculate and her gaze unyielding. Her reputation was that of a meticulous seeker of truth, yet in this case, the evidence compiled against Naomi held gaps wide enough for questions to slip through. Whispered conversations had spread throughout Oakville, suggesting Naomi was more than merely innocent, spun in a web of deceit woven by someone more sinister. Judge Simpson cleared his throat, his deep voice cutting through the room's murmured edge. "Let us proceed," he said, arranging his spectacles before him. "We will now hear testimony from Amara Bennett. Please approach the stand, young lady." His tone softened slightly for Amara, echoing a gentleness reserved perhaps for the very young or those without adult guile. With a determined look on her face, Amara rose, her small figure making its way to the stand escorted by the proud aura of bravery. The hem of her pale yellow dress, a little crinkled from sitting, fluttered lightly as she walked. As she climbed onto a chair, her back met the worn wood with a measure of newfound composure, hands resting on her lap, each finger intertwined with its opposite. "State your name for the record," Judge Simpson asked. "Less a question, more a formality." "Amara Lee Bennett," she replied, her voice unwavering, lifting slightly at the punctuation of her middle name, providing it an added weight of declaration. "Do you understand why you're here today, Amara?" Judge Simpson inquired gently, interest sparking his eyes. Amara nodded, her seriousness reflected in the echo of maturity in her answer. "Yes, sir. I'm here to help everyone understand my mom didn't do anything wrong." A low murmur rippled through the audience. Simple, powerful words from a child tending to ignite poignant recognition more effortlessly than the finest crafted arguments. Ms. Dalton attempted to mask the slight shift of discomfort that shadowed her face, while Mr. Owens tilted his head, a sign of silent encouragement. "Very well, you may proceed," the judge invited, his wary eyes now fully attuned to the truth that could see the case resolve. Amara paused, searching for words she had rehearsed countless times under the gentle watch of Mr. Owens and the solemn night skies alike, where worry met resolve, mingling with dreams of justice. "My mom works very hard," she began, each word steeped in vivid, heartfelt intention rippled clear across the room. Every night she'd come home tired, and before doing anything else, she'd check her work papers. She'd always tell me how important it was to be honest and do your best. She always kept notes and records so she wouldn't lose anything. Amara glanced at Naomi, met her eyes with love so deep it momentarily drowned their tense reality. Her voice wavered a bit, an edge of vulnerability slipped in, but the determination regathered quickly. That's why I know she couldn't have taken anything she wasn't supposed to. It doesn't make sense. Mr. Owens seized the momentum, standing to ask gently, Amara, can you tell us about any specific times you remember your mom working on these papers and how she spoke about them? Yes, every Thursday, Amara answered with quiet assurance. She'd show me her budget sheets, like a picture book, but with numbers. She'd have different colored pens to mark things like what she earned and what she saved for. It's something she says we should always do, to be ready and honest with what you have. The courtroom grew visibly absorbed, drawn not only to her story but also to the purity of her intent. She was painting a portrait of Naomi not simply through cold facts, but through the lens of deep, personal trust and love. It was hard for even the most hardened heart not to feel. Ms. Dalton interjected tactfully, attempting to regain her footing. Amara, is it possible that you might have misunderstood what your mother was doing or saying? Gently shaking her head, Amara responded, No, my mom would always explain. Even if something was hard or complicated, she'd tell me the truth. Her reply resonated with a child's clarity offered as unshakable as the oaks outside, speaking volumes. Long before the events that brought them to the courtroom, Amara Bennett's world was one bound by a delicate balance of simplicity and dreams. Her days began with the soft, early morning light filtering through thin curtains, casting muted patterns on her bedroom walls. In these moments where dreams lingered at the edges of waking, her mother Naomi would already be bustling around their small apartment, the ever-present aroma of fresh coffee weaving its familiar comfort through the modest, sunlit kitchen. Amara watched her mother as an artist might study a muse. Naomi carried an enchanting vivacity as she went about her routines, every task completed with a unique grace, and every challenge faced with an unwavering resolve. Their world, though modest in its offerings, was full of the kind of connection and warmth that grew from a mother's unyielding love and a daughter's blossoming admiration. Naomi had always been open with Amara about their situation. We might not have everything, she'd say, her voice both soothing and firm, but we have what we need. Those words became a mantra that Amara held close, a reminder of her mother's profound capability to find joy and strength amid adversity. School days wound their way through structured hours, as Amara navigated Oakville Elementary with a keen mind and gentle disposition. Her teachers praised her for both her intellect and her empathy, qualities deeply ingrained through Naomi's nurture. Friendships formed in spontaneous bursts of laughter across the playground, her classmates drawn to the quiet confidence that belied her young age. Yet it was the evenings that held the most significance for Amara. Dinner would be a symphony of sizzling pans and the rich aroma of Naomi's homemade stews, a legacy of her own mother passed down without recipes, each measure guided by memory and intuition. Seated opposite each other at their narrow kitchen table, amidst mismatched cutlery and the fading echoes of the evening news, they shared their tales of the day, the cheerful, the mundane, the challenges craftily overcome. Naomi often spoke about her work, the job she performed with meticulous care despite its modesty. It's not just about the pay, she would say, adjusting her glasses with a hint of a gentle smile. It's about pride in what we do, about showing the world who we truly are through our actions. Naomi's words painted vivid pictures of her day, as clear as any storybook, infusing life lessons within the tales of her workplace. As the night deepened, the scene would shift, and the dining table would soon transform into Naomi's workspace. Boxes of papers would replace dinner dishes, each document carefully scrutinized and sorted with precision. Budget sheets spread out like mosaics before them, bearing a map of their future marked by colorful pens. Naomi taught Amara the language of numbers, a language of dreams written in neat columns and rows. To Amara, these sessions were like evening classes, lessons in diligence and integrity, lessons threaded with love. Amara learned to watch for the subtle shifts in her mother's expressions, moments of pride when the rows added up neatly, or lines of worry when they did not. Naomi included Amara in these tasks not merely as a witness, but as a partner, instilling within her a profound understanding of their small kingdom's workings. It surfaced naturally, then, that Amara absorbed these teachings not only with youthful curiosity, but with profound understanding. She cherished the unspoken bond they shared in those quiet hours, the symbiosis of mutual trust interspersed with the gentle clatter of pens and the rustling of papers. Their lives were modest, yes, but rich in resourcefulness. Together, they transformed the narratives of hardship into tapestries woven with resilience and hope. Those evenings reflected the universe Naomi had nurtured, one where every action told a story of honesty and dedication, a narrative uncorrupted by deceit or greed. It was this foundation of truth that made the allegations against Naomi seem discordant, a jarring note in an otherwise harmonious life. The accusation not only threatened their livelihood but attacked the very values on which Naomi and Amara had built their reality. Naomi's integrity was a fortress, yet in the face of law, unsupported by physical evidence, felt fragile and disturbingly vulnerable. So when Naomi's world was upended by the allegations of embezzlement, Amara's reality was fractured but not shattered. She observed, questioned, and absorbed it all, her youthful clarity piecing together threads of truth with a sophistication that astounded those around her. Each memory, each story told over supper, foreshadowed Amara's potential role, a guardian of the truth and a beacon of light cutting through the darkness of doubt enveloping her mother. The courtroom testimony allowed Amara to paint a picture for everyone that was not forged from legal jargon or meticulous files, but was instead built from lived truths and shared moments. Her words held power not just because they were honest, but because the life she narrated was animated by sincere human connection, a stark contrast to the cold logic of the prosecution's claims. All eyes rested on Amara. Each faced the canvas of anticipation and skepticism, waiting to be transformed. Through her unique perspective brimming with genuineness, her voice emerged as the heart of story that countered the allegations, not with grandiloquence, but with irrefutable authenticity. In Amara's world, the kitchen was never just a place to eat. It was where values were cooked, conversations stirred, and principles baked with life's lessons. She became her mother's voice, a voice that reaffirmed their reality with the artistry of memory and the clarity only a child could muster. This tender world portrayed Naomi as she truly was, a mother, an honest worker, a figure of inspirational resolve. Amara's testimony was a gentle storm, clearing the haze of doubt. It was a testament to the love that formed the backbone of their life, and the precise testimony that could yet redeem Naomi in the eyes of justice, a victory not only for them, but for the truth and all it underpinned. In the dense hours of the night, when stars prickled the sky like quiet witnesses to unseen battles, Naomi Bennett wrestled with the shadows of despair that crept into the corners of her mind. Despite the facades worn bravely each day, the specter of the accusations loomed ever-present, a constant reminder of the precariousness teetered upon by the simplest of lives. Her nights were stolen from her by visions of courtrooms and the echoing finality of a gavel striking wood. Yet in these moments of solitude, it was not fear that grounded Naomi, but a fierce, unyielding resolve. Her strength was woven tightly into the fabric of her days, displayed in the meticulous order she continued to maintain over their small kingdom. The methodical ritual of her evening tasks around the apartment somehow provided a balm to the swirling chaos of injustice outside, keeping the looming chaos at bay through sheer will. Amara was asleep when her mother allowed the mask of assurance to slip, if only for a moment. It was then, in the quiet whispers of 2 a.m., that Naomi carefully laid out the papers for the next day, checking every ledger entry, twice if need be, desperate to find that elusive clue capable of absolving her. Her confidence in numbers, which had once guided her to a sense of security, felt perilously deceitful in those darkened hours. "What am I missing?" she would ask herself, her voice barely more than a breath against the oppressively still air. The room around her, their cherished kitchen, repository of family history and dreams, felt charged with silent expectation. She placed a gentle hand on the dining table, its surface smooth and worn with memories, seeking comfort amongst its familiar lines, much like a sailor searching for grounded land amidst a turbulent sea. Naomi's job at the local grocery was meticulous and solitary, dedicated to managing the inventory that kept Oakville fed. For years, her work was a quiet testament to her integrity and reliability, handled with a pride that no title could diminish. She shared her work anecdotes openly with Amara, stories that radiated the little victories worth celebrating, finding the perfect organization system, shaving a margin from the budget while enriching the quality of produce offered. But recently, in a cruel twist, whispers had begun to circulate, rumors snaking their way through the aisles and past the carefully manicured shelves. Customers who once greeted her with warm smiles began casting suspicious glances, each one potentially holding the dreaded accusation Naomi feared the most. Amongst these acts, a ledger went out of balance, and a faceless doubt crept into their close-knit community, questioning whether Naomi's honesty was as genuine as it appeared. Amara, perceptive and keenly intuitive, sensed the questions that weighed heavily on her mother's heart. Even at 10 years old, her mind was a fertile garden, nurtured by the seeds of conversations, numbers, and shared struggles. And so, in the face of Naomi's struggle, Amara took on a clandestine effort of her own, using the quiet sophistication of a child to understand what was happening beyond the veneer of adult worries. "Mom," Amara said one evening as she helped clear the dinner table, her voice carrying a note of calm curiosity. "Is everything okay at work?" There was a firmness to her question that popped into the air, demanding revelation rather than deflection. "Of course, sweetheart," Naomi responded instinctively, her voice warm but edged with something buried deep. Her smile was reassuring, a shield forged over years of protecting Amara from their harsher realities. Yet, beneath it, the uncertainty simmered, lending a fragile break to her usually compassionate tone. "We'll get through this," Naomi added after a pause, trying to echo the strength she had always shown her daughter. The resolve hung in the air, buttressing their silent agreement that no matter what happened, they had each other. This exchange lingered in Amara's mind, a spark that ignited her own unspoken plan. Quietly, she watched and listened at school and at home, drawing connections in her mind, the innocuous becoming profound, impressions recording themselves in sharp relief along the chapters of her memory. She helped her mother with tasks when never possible, not by demand but through a desire to lend a hand and ease Naomi's burdens, understanding that love was a mutual exchange, deeply reciprocal yet effortlessly given. It was in these moments that Amara learned much about the nuances of the adult world, not through papers and headlines, but through Naomi's example and the profound stories layered within everyday interactions. The kitchen transformed, once again, into a place of secrets shared, where truth confronted fear, a balance found only when the mightiest challenges threatened to upset their world. As the days inched inexorably towards Naomi's court date, the weight of the forthcoming trial pressed down upon every quiet hour. Amara imagined herself standing in the courtroom, all eyes upon her small figure, a sea of faces anxious for stories greater than their own, searching for an accident of fate or an unfathomable truth unveiled. "Mom," Amara spoke the night before the trial, as her mother set aside the papers, her gaze contemplative beneath the kitchen's dim light. "When I tell them about you, when I tell them everything, they'll have to listen." "Right." Naomi looked at Amara, her heart overflowing with gratitude and tender pride. Her eyes shone with unshed tears, their light reflected not in the opposite form of sadness, but the mirrored resilience held within her daughter's soul. "They will, Amara," Naomi assured, taking Amara's hand into her own and holding it firmly. "They will hear you, and they will understand." It wasn't a matter of age or experience, but the unassailable conviction of a girl who had learned life's truest lessons in the gentlest way possible, through love and shared sorrows transformed into hope. The morning of the trial arrived, and as the community members began their journey to the courthouse, a swath of emotions accompanied them: curiosity, preconception, skepticism. But something else began to trickle in, unseen but potent: hope. They gathered not just to witness the unfolding of justice, but to witness how one small voice could strive against an unjust tide, speak truths tethered in authenticity, and redeem not only her mother but reaffirm the lanes of justice in which they all tread. Naomi's struggle, thus untold in the courtroom yet alive in every fiber, was a testament shared between mother and daughter, articulated not through legal defense but through stories lived and memories that proved, beyond doubt, the unbreakable threads of character and truth in the fabric of their lives. In the vast theater of justice, where every ticking second seemed amplified by the room's solemn architecture, Naomi Bennett stood accused, a position born from a series of unexplained discrepancies that had rocked the once solid foundation of her honest life. It wasn't just the stacks of paperwork and suspicious glares that seeded doubt in the mind of the jury. It was the meticulously constructed narrative that the prosecutor had woven, one that painted Naomi as a conspirator behind a calculated embezzlement scheme. Amidst the heavy air of the courtroom that day, the spotlight shone glaringly on the presented evidence. The prosecution began its case by pulling a whiteboard into the center of the room, on which was displayed a series of spreadsheets, meticulously aligned like soldiers in formation. On the surface, they represented Naomi's meticulous accounting at the grocery store where she had worked for over a decade. But now, these once neutral records were weaponized against her, each line item turned into an accusing finger that jabbed harshly at her reputation. "Ms. Bennett," boomed the prosecutor, a tall, stern man whose words cut through the courtroom like jagged shards. Could you please explain why these funds, earmarked specifically for supplier payments, were instead redirected? Naomi's heart raced in her chest, a knight trying to steel itself against the battering rams of an impending siege. I never diverted any funds, she replied, her voice steady. There must be a mistake. I've always handled my duties with integrity. But logic played a shrouded damsel only partially unveiled by light. The prosecution pressed on, deconstructing Naomi's life into numbers, wire transfers, and paper trails carelessly strewn with implications of deceit. They cited late-night alterations on the computer systems, movements that Naomi herself found baffling. Each new piece of data they introduced seemed to tighten a net they argued only she had the insider access to weave. Rows upon rows of bank statements and transaction logs were passed around, seemingly corroborating a narrative foreign to Naomi's heart but growing ever familiar to the jury, a jury whose faces ranged from skepticism to outright indifference, clouded by layers of bias and societal expectation. In the back of the courtroom sat Amara, grasping every word as though they were puzzle pieces. She was quietly determined to reassemble with a truth only she and her mother knew. Her young eyes, wide with monumental determination, never left her mother, drawing strength from the evidence of their shared history, one she prepared to voice against cold, fabricated lies. Mr. Owens took the floor with a calm resolve. He unraveled possible scenarios of intentional misdirection at the workplace, pointing out that Naomi had only access to systems during the day and framing alternative stories where errors or third-party interference might abound. But words struggled against the visual violence of spreadsheets stacked against Naomi. It was during a pause in the proceedings, while Naomi looked down at her hands, capable yet now shackled by accusation, that Amara was keenly aware of the charge her words could carry. She remembered afternoons spent with motherly anecdotes far more binding than legal knots, about the pride in an honest day's work and the serene justice of balancing ledgers with precision and clarity. The narratives exchanged over their dinner table illuminated the truth of her mother's character amid these ostentatious fabrications. Order in the courtroom. The gavel's thud echoed solemnly, interrupting Amara's reverie. It was a judicious receding of sound into the corners of thought, a reminder that reality bore weight beyond the scales of evidence presented so far. It was within the silence, the eye of a narrative storm, when the defense called its star witness, Amara Bennett. The room's gaze shifted, eyes widening and leaning into the unexpected weight a child's viewpoint could lend. Amara's heart thudded insistently, matching her mother's measured breath, an invisible symphony played to chords of trust and truth. As she approached the witness stand, her footsteps echoed resolutely, their sound swallowed by the carpet of anticipation drawn over the room. Her youthful visage contradicted the courtroom's somber physicality, a rumble of innocence against the grindstone of hardened judicial solemnity. Amara Bennett, began Mr. Owens, his voice tender. Can you tell us about the kind of person your mother is and what you know about her work? Amara paused, gathering memories not merely as rebuttals, but as testimonies of love and steel. My mom, Naomi, is the honest person I know, she began, her voice clear and strong. She tells me stories about her work every day, about how she makes sure the shelves have only the best stuff and that every penny matches what's on the receipts. The courtroom shifted. Even the judge leaned slightly forward, attending closely to each word strung together by the innocence and conviction of youth. Amara spoke of evenings at the dining table, books and digits sprawled about in precision, befitting any military strategist, untangling tales that painted integrity and gritty determination rather than fallible shadows. She taught me, Amara continued, her voice imbued with bright clarity as though sunrise had cleansed the dark clouds of doubt, that if you make a mistake, you correct it. And if something doesn't add up, you fight to make it right. She clasped her hands tightly, searching the crowd for understanding beyond legal jargon or adult impatience. My mom wouldn't take money or do anything bad. She saved for everything, every book and for my school. The stark honesty cut through layers of adversarial skepticism, penetrating deeper than ledger items could reach, a daughter weaving truth's fluid tapestry as a cooling bomb over heated accusations. Quietly, Mr. Owens approached with a new set of documents, transcripts of Naomi's emails and logs unearthed through Amara's unwitting suggestion. They detailed an alert Naomi herself had raised months earlier regarding discrepancies, overlooked by a system too caught up in bureaucracy to heed them. Through Amara's testimony, not just reams of numbers, but eyes and hearts in the room were threaded back to the very soul of Naomi's pride and purpose, her unwavering shield now wielded through tiny hands that spoke eloquently for an innocence presumed corrupted, now beautifully restored. In the courtroom, where truth often stumbled amidst tangled roots of marginal assumptions, a little girl's clarity had sown seeds of doubt and cause of doubt, leaving upon tables once heavy with gravity, a lightness, a possibility rendered by the delicate, but undeniable power of unwavering faith and the undiluted spear of pure human spirit. In the weeks leading up to the trial, Amara Bennett showed a level of maturity beyond her 10 years, stepping into the spaces where her mother stumbled under the weight of daunting accusations. Life had transformed their simple routines into a swirl of uncertainty, yet Amara clung to the unwavering belief in her mother's honest nature. Her resolve blossomed from the love and integrity that Naomi had sown into every crevice of Amara's world, a world framed by bedtime stories and math facts resolved over the kitchen table. Each evening, as shadows gathered in corners, Amara listened to Naomi recount the day's trials and worries, piecing them together like the intricate jigsaw puzzles they often enjoyed. And in those moments, Amara decided that her own voice, untouched by malice and clear as spring air, might just cut through the dense tangles of adult doubt. Naomi's work ethic was renowned amongst those who truly knew her. The grocery store, nestled quaintly at the end of their street, had been her second home for over a decade. It was more than a job where she meticulously managed finances. It was a place where she found dignity and diligence. From managing fair trades to personally ensuring that deliveries met the town's standards, Naomi's hands were always busy with good work. Yet, the recent shadow cast by accusations felt impenetrable, even to the most familiar of eyes. "Amara, you've always been good with computers and records, right?" Mr. Owens, their determined and somewhat avuncular lawyer, had asked one day during a strategy session at their kitchen table in the cluttered warmth of home. The evening light framed a resolve on his face, illuminating his belief in Naomi's innocence. "Do you remember when your mom received those alerts she mentioned? About the accounts and discrepancies?" Amara shrugged, hesitating at first, her fingers tracing the edges of a worn workbook. But then the memory found her, like a whisper rising, affirming strength through the ether. "Yes," she nodded, her voice gaining confidence. "She was worried. I saw her sending emails. She was really upset that no one seemed to notice or fix anything." Those words became a pivot, cataloging a moment where personal concern translated into potential evidence. Mr. Owens seized on this. Together, he and Amara examined the digital trails those alerts had left behind, evidence quietly filed away in an almost forgotten folder until now. It was in the silvery pre-dawn hours of quiet resolve that found Amara scouring through records Naomi had dutifully kept. Each page turned was a testament to a life honest and forthright. With pen and paper in hand, she diligently noted down the sequence of events and accounts as she pieced through her mother's records. This became the groundwork upon which she would stand for her mother in court. Inside the courtroom's echoing silence, as Naomi sat steeped in dread beneath the towering architecture of the law, it was time for Amara to take her place. The solemnity of the scene that unfolded, the people versus Naomi Bennett, was punctuated by Amara's resolute footsteps, a song of quiet assurance in the hall of judgment. Facing the gathered crowd under the intense scrutiny of practiced eyes, Amara knew she wasn't just defending her mother, she was unraveling the truth, one thread at a time. Her young hands clutched the rail of the witness stand, a buoy against oceans of solemn faces. "Amara Bennett," intoned Mr. Owens, his fatherly tone softening the courtroom's barbed atmosphere. "Can you tell us about the kind of person your mother is and what you know about her work?" Amara took a deep breath. Somehow, under this gaze, she felt less the child and more a bearer of truth. Her voice rang out, steady as she conjured up memories that wove integrity into these proceedings. "My mom, Naomi, is the honest person I know," she said, with the weight of certainty that left no room for doubt. "She always says to do the right thing, even when it's hard." She recalled evenings spent beside Naomi, her mother's fingers leaving grooves of diligence alongside burgeoning dreams as they worked through budgets and plans with precision. "She checks everything, twice even," Amara continued. "She never let mistakes slide. If something was wrong, she'd stay late just to fix it." Amara's words painted vivid pictures, bringing to life the truths that flourished beyond reach of mere numbers and transactions. Her narrative sailed across the courtroom, brushing over jurors, teasing a compassion laced with growing understanding. The prosecutor watched impassively, yet leaned in despite himself. Amara pressed on, her truth alight in an often dark world. "She keeps everything balanced, at work and at home. When I'm ever in trouble, I know I can count on her to do the right thing. She built our life on that, honesty." The courtroom seemed to exhale, a collective breath taken at the life breathed into static sheets of accusations. Mr. Owens approached the bench with newly obtained evidence, showed the transcripts of emails that Naomi had sent, warning of errors and concerns she diligently raised to those higher in the chain, going unheeded. These were sprinkled with treasures born from Amara's quiet determination to record each instance they later connected over. Naomi, sitting in silence, felt the weight upon her heart's ease as her daughter crafted a tapestry of truth no numbers could tarnish. Her eyes shimmered with tears, gratitude stroking her spirit with each word her daughter uttered. Amara's right, Mr. Owens concluded, pointing toward the sound foundation laid by young conviction. The greatest evidence of Naomi Bennett's character is the honesty she imprints on those around her, clear perhaps now even to those who doubted. Amara's testimony lingered, an echo of resilience that navigated the courtroom currents like a ship through storm, illuminating the stolen innocence her mother had fought to retain. For the people witnessing this living parable of conviction, something shifted, a subtle drift in perception, creating the space necessary for doubt to take hold against injustice. This was less a scene of law, more a resurrection of spirit, a daughter's unwavering love slashed through the uncertainty as oak branches give way to sunlight. Amara stood firm, an island of truth amidst an ocean of doubt, embodying the primal beauty of a child's unyielding faith in her mother as the unseen jury deliberated the evidence of innocence, brought forth not by eloquence, but through simple truth unsullied by the games of adults. And so it was here that Amara Bennett catalyzed justice, not as a lawyer or judge, but with a singular pure notion of family, fighting for redemption standing in love's steadfast shadow. Amara Bennett felt the heat of the courtroom like 100 eyes upon her as she made her way to the witness stand. Her small footsteps echoed, a steady rhythm that belied her racing heart. Each step carried the weight of hope, fear, and the undeniable bond between her and Naomi, a connection that had weathered storms of uncertainty, now converging into this pivotal moment. The courtroom, sprawling with an imposing grandeur, seemed to loom around her like the fortified walls of an age-old fortress. But Amara was undeterred. In her mind, she wasn't a child, she was her mother's champion. The judge, a stern figure upon a pedestal, nodded solemnly as Amara was sworn in. She barely heard the murmur of the oath, her attention pinned on the expectations and doubts surrounding her. But when she finally faced the sea of grown-up expressions, an array of skepticism and scrutiny, she remembered Naomi's comforting words whispered the night before. Just tell the truth, sweetie. Truth is like light. It always finds a way through the cracks. Amara's fingers gripped the wooden rail of the stand, ground zero for her testimony. Word and witness meets the high stakes of justice. Her gaze darted briefly to her mother, seated with hands clasped tightly in her lap, her face an intricate mask of hope and trepidation. Naomi's eyes, bright and encouraging, lingered on Amara's own. It was all the reassurance she needed. Amara Bennett, Mr. Owens began, his voice brimming with warmth that transcended the formalities of the courtroom. The familiarity in his tone was deliberate, a thread connecting the courtroom's heart with the realities of life outside its walls. Can you tell us about the kind of person your mother is and what you know about her work? Amara took a deep breath, time stretching elastically around her, as if the world held its breath, waiting for her narrative to unfold. Her voice, soft yet startlingly self-assured, broke the anticipatory silence. My mom, Naomi, is the most honest person I know, she declared. Her words, simple yet profound, resonated in the high-vaulted ceiling of the courtroom, echoing a truth often muddied by adult complexities. She always says to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Amara's memories, infused with the subtleties of familial bonds, began to paint vivid tapestries of integrity and dedication. She unfolded tales of their evenings together, of Naomi laboring late into the night, her diligence guided by unbending morals and fueled by love. She checks everything, twice even, Amara continued, her voice clarity itself. She never lets mistakes slide. If something was wrong, she'd stay late, just to fix it. Her accounting drifted across the courtroom like soft summer winds, enveloping the jury and spectators in an unexpected cocoon of understanding. The prosecutor, a reserved man with hawk-like eyes, sat forward, intrigued despite his practiced dispassion. Here was a girl unmoved by the charades of legal theater, bearing her world and in it the unwavering uprightness of her mother. Amara continued, her words an unerring compass aimed directly at truth. She keeps everything balanced, at work and at home. Whenever I'm in trouble, I can always count on her to do the right thing. The narrative ran deeper than ledgers could show. It washed over the accused, revealing a character of quiet fortitude built upon years of honest labor. As the tale unfolded, the courtroom seemed to exhale, a whisper of collective realization and empathy awakening to life within static facts painted by prosecution. At the defense table, Mr. Owens approached the bench, clutching freshly unearthed evidence. Here were emails Naomi had sent, highlighting errors, calling out discrepancies ignored by those wielding power. Here was proof Naomi had voiced her concerns loudly enough to turn whispers into shouts, if anyone had truly listened. Amar is right, Mr. Owens concluded, his voice both herald and conduit of Naomi's enduring legacy. The greatest evidence of Naomi Bennett's character is the honesty she imprints on those around her. Clear now, even to those who doubted. The room grew still, the hum of shifting perspectives touching everyone within. For Naomi, words seemed unnecessary. She felt foundation settling beneath her, a reprieve carved lovingly by her daughter. Her eyes shone with tears, unspoken gratitude brushing Amara's cheek like a mother's gentle touch. Amara, standing firm, emanated resilience. Through her youthful yet discerning testimony, she became an embodiment of pure truth navigating stormy seas of doubt. And within courtroom walls often weighed with calculated impersonality, this brief yet potent parable of conviction had reached anchor. For those who bore witness to the nascent heroism, one blossoming not from eloquence, but from irrefutable love, there was a perceptible shift, an invitation to question the narratives we impose versus the truths we let stand. The jury went to deliberate, taking with them Amara's testimony woven into the tapestry of all they'd heard, its vigor and simplicity sparking a hopeful nudge closer to justice. Mr. Owens whispered assurances to Naomi, promising faith in the truth her daughter bravely shared. The courtroom lights dimmed for just the briefest moment, allowing shadows to retreat and truths whispered to emerge, radiant in their simplicity. And so it was here that young Amara Bennett catalyzed justice, not as a lawyer nor a judge, but through fierce conviction driven by love. The child's faith became the linchpin of redemption, testament that even in shadows, voices speaking truth will always find their light. The vast courtroom felt as if a cathedral in the silence that followed Amara Bennett's quiet yet resolute declarations. From her vantage point at the witness stand, she appeared small, yet undeniably potent, her voice wrapping the proceedings in a cocoon of unfiltered truth. As her words lingered in the lingering warmth of the afternoon light filtering through tall windows, the gallery was left pondering the innocent wisdom she wielded. Amara, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your mom? Mr. Owens asked gently, sensing the courtroom's heartbeat sinking with Amara's narrative. Amara blinked, her eyes resting briefly on the polished sheen of courtroom grandeur before she resumed. My mom always tells me stories before bed, she began, painting pictures with her words that contrasted sharply against the stark environment surrounding her. Her favorite ones have heroes who always fight for what's right, no matter how hard or scary. She says truth is the greatest sword and shield. The simplicity was disarming, like the freshness of morning dew, and the impact of her metaphorical heroes began to weave itself into the courtroom's fabric. Amara's guileless courage began to catch flames of admiration hidden behind professional facades. Every ear was tuned in, and even the plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Hargrove, a towering figure known for his meticulous dissection of legalities, could not mask the intrigue pulling at his otherwise impassive features. He shuffled his papers, rearranging arguments in the face of this unexpected narrative assault, a child's arc of honesty tinged with innocence. Beneath their exterior, the jury, initially filling seats with preoccupied solemnity, began leaning closer. Their faces reflected a medley of curiosity and contemplation drawn by the magnetic pull of narratives that transcended dry legal jargon. Amara continued, her tale an unbroken thread narrating nights shared over Naomi's diligent work. Many times, I'd fall asleep at the table just watching her. I'd see her checking everything down to the last detail. She says it's important to make sure things are right, she added, her soft voice casting long shadows of introspection against the panel woodwork. The prosecutor inhaled, preparing to redirect focus, perhaps challenge the child's credibility or guide proceedings back toward facts favorable to their case. But before he could speak, Amara took the moment and expanded it, her gaze from the stand rooting in the eyes of her mother, finding strength pooled within them. Once, just before this all started, I remember hearing my mom on the phone, talking about some problem she noticed at work, Amara said, unearthing a new layer of the tapestry inadvertently painted by prosecution. She sounded worried but determined to fix it, not hide it. Here, Amara's gentle revelation stumbled upon the heartbeat of Naomi's innocence, not omissions, but an unyielding endeavor to pursue truth against the walls of disarray. Her testimony flowed effortlessly, exuding an intimacy so profound it began to reassemble the case like puzzle pieces falling into place with each image cast clear by trust. Nearby, Mr. Owens seized this fluid opportunity. Approaching the judge, his voice resonated with a timbre of conviction backed by meticulous preparation and faith in Amara's faith. Your Honor, if we may introduce these documents as evidence, communications indicating Naomi Bennett's active role in highlighting discrepancies ignored by corporate oversight. The judge, a stern yet fair interrogator of truth, nodded, permitting Mr. Owens to present the tangible threads born from Amara's story, emails, reports, log entries, not for dramatic revelation but as a bridge where innocence lay waiting across the gulf of doubt. In the courtroom, an unbearable silence wound tightly, snapping around Naomi's seat. Her shoulders, once rigid under the weight of unjust accusation, softened with newfound hope. Each document Mr. Owens laid tenderly on the judge's dais was a testament, a physical embodiment lost amid the noise of misconstrued allegations, now cleared by the searching light of a child's witness. Naomi's actions align with not just compliance but proactive protection, Mr. Owens enunciated, marking each word with deliberate care. The same honesty Amara describes. This is the backbone of not only her personal life but of her professional ethos, a road clearly realized here today. Naomi watched, tears unstoppably pooling and then escaping delicately down her cheeks, each drop celebrating redemption authored by her daughter. Amara's task, not merely to clear Naomi's name, but to uncover the humanity often shadowed by legal proceedings, had reached its clarion peak. The soft rustling of paper and a communicative hum enveloped the jury, binding them to the sincerity and emotional clarity unspooled before them. Recess was called, allowing deliberation, a sacred pause where the human heart often finds rhythm amidst the clatter of systematic logic. The courtroom emptied slowly, conversations trailing into corners, doubt muted by conscience's gentle cry urging aligned reflection. Naomi, upon the courtroom's steps, gathered Amara beside her. "You were incredible, sweetie," she whispered, embracing the child whose bravery had unfurled a maternal legacy once unseen past the thickets of injustice. Amara grinned, her features alight with the innocence and knowledge that, despite age or experience, the truth whispered into shadows, when carried by love, can outshine even the darkest curtain. For in the struggle between light and shadow, Amara had learned not only that truth finds its passage, but that through the simplest offerings of heart, the world tilts itself inevitably toward justice. The trial, while not officially concluded, bore the imprint now ascended from uncertainty into a testimony, a transformative acknowledgement of life woven inherently with righteousness and faith. And when the court reconvened, their journey toward deliverance found steadier footing, one guided not by courtroom acumen alone, but by a daughter's pure and simple testament. The vast courtroom felt like a cathedral in the silence that followed Amara Bennett's quiet yet resolute declarations. From her vantage point at the witness stand, she appeared small but undeniably potent, while her voice wrapped the proceedings in a cocoon of unfiltered truth. As her words lingered in the afternoon light filtering through tall windows, the gallery pondered the innocent wisdom she wielded, a wisdom that threatened to unravel the prosecution's carefully crafted web. "Amara, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your mom?" Mr. Owens asked gently. He sensed the courtroom's heartbeat syncing with Amara's narrative, every ear tuned to her next words. Amara blinked, her eyes flickering to the hallowed grandeur of the room, a sea of starchy shirts, severe faces, and imposing legalities, before she resumed. "My mom always tells me stories before bed," she began, her words painting vivid pictures that contrasted sharply with her solemn surroundings. "Her favorites have heroes who always fight for what's right, no matter how hard or scary. She says truth is the greatest sword and shield." The courtroom's tiled floor seemed to absorb the simplicity and warmth of Amara's words, disarming even the bristling skepticism from across the aisle. Mr. Hargrove, the plaintiff's attorney, was a towering figure reputed for his meticulous legal dissection. Yet, even his measured indifference quivered under the unexpected assault of a child's honesty. He shuffled his papers, rearranging his arguments in the wake of Amara's narrative simplicity. The jury, a mix of curious eyes and thoughtful expressions, leaned closer. Faces that were initially filled with preoccupied solemnity now reflected a medley of curiosity and contemplation, drawn to the magnetic pull of a story that transcended the arid jargon of legal procedure. Amara continued seamlessly, her words a relentless but gentle tide washing over the courtroom. Her tale was an unbroken thread, embroidering nights shared over Naomi's diligent work. Many times, I'd fall asleep at the table just watching her, she recounted with a smile. I'd see her checking everything down to the last detail. She says it's important to make sure things are right. Her soft voice cast long shadows of introspection against the wooden paneling. The prosecutor inhaled, ready to redirect focus, perhaps intending to challenge Amara's credibility or steer proceedings back toward the cooler realm of empirical facts. Yet before he could countermeasure, Amara seized the moment, her voice steady, eyes rooted in her mother's. Her gaze was a lifeline of undying belief and strength drawn from Naomi, who returned it with unwavering love and trust. Once, just before all this started, I remember hearing my mom on the phone, talking about some problem she noticed at work. Amara revealed, peeling back another layer of the fabricated case painted by the prosecution. Her revelation was like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. She sounded worried but determined to fix it, not hide it. Her gentle revelations captured the heart of Naomi's innocence. Naomi wasn't guilty of omission, but rather had been on an unyielding quest to seek truth in the chaos. Her testimony flowed effortlessly, exuding an intimacy so profound that it began to reassemble the case like missing puzzle pieces falling into place, each piece sealing its perfect fit with her words. Mr. Owens closed distance to the bench, his gait confident with conviction tempered by meticulous preparation and faith in Amara's truth. "Your Honor," he called out respectfully, reverberating strength and resolve, "if we could introduce these documents as evidence, communications that elucidate Naomi Bennett's role in highlighting discrepancies that corporate oversight chose to ignore." The judge, discernment etched deeply into his features, nodded assent. "Proceed," he said in a voice neither cold nor warm, but unambiguously layered with impartial justice. Mr. Owens presented tangible threads supported by Amara's narrative, emails, detailed reports, log entries, not for dramatic revelation but as evidence of Naomi's integrity. This was a bridge to innocence, appearing now within reach across the chasm of doubt. The courtroom held its collective breath, the silence coiling like a tightly wound spring, binding Naomi to her seat. Her shoulders, once hard-set under undeserved accusations, softened, cracks of fear sealing with a new hope meticulously rebuilt. Each document Mr. Owens tenderly laid upon the judge's dais was a testament, a physical echo of truths once lost amidst the cacophony of allegations. They now shone, uncovered by the clarity of a child's influence. Naomi's actions align with not only compliance but proactive protection, Mr. Owens emphasized, each syllable a deliberate strike against the prosecution's crumbling facade. The same honesty Amara describes as the backbone of not just her home but Naomi's professional ethos, a path clearly illuminated here today. Naomi's eyes pooled with tears as she listened, each droplet an embodiment of redemption scripted by her daughter's gentle fortitude. Amara's contribution sought not only to clear her mother's name, but to unveil the deeply human elements often overshadowed by legal formality. The courtroom seemed to lean in, paper rustling lightly, enveloped by the hum of emotional clarity and sincerity only a child could unspool. A recess was called, allowing for the necessary contemplations of the jury, a sacred pause where human hearts often find rhythm amidst the clatter of systematic logic. The courtroom slowly emptied, conversations trailing into quiet corners, doubt now muted by the stirrings of conscience nudged awake. On the courthouse steps, Naomi gathered Amara beside her, squeezing her tiny shoulder with more pride interwoven in her touch than words could convey. "You were incredible, sweetie," Naomi whispered, eyes shimmering with an immeasurable gratitude, embracing the child whose bravery had unfurled a maternal legacy obscured behind the thickets of injustice. Amara grinned, eyes sparkling with the dual innocence and understanding that truth, whispered even in shadow, when borne by love, can outshine the darkest veils. For in the struggle between light and shadow, Amara had glimmered with the knowledge that truth finds its own paths to justice, etched in humanity's canvas, even through the simplest of hearts. The trial, while not officially concluded, bore the imprint now elevated from uncertainty into a narratively transformative acknowledgement. Along the spectrum from legal acumen to heartfelt truth, Amara's simple testament had shifted the balance, guiding the path to deliverance steadier now under the clarion call of childhood courage. As the courtroom resumed its deliberate rhythm, Naomi felt a faint flicker inside, a small flame of hope warding off the shadows that had lingered for months. Her heart swelled with pride as her daughter returned to her seat, the remnants of Amara's testimony cascading through the room like ripples on a pond. Though Naomi's fate still teetered in uncertainty, the shift was palpable, as if whispered truths now danced within the echoes of Amara's words. Amara leaned into Naomi, her small hand finding refuge in her mother's. "We're going to be okay, Mama," she whispered, her voice quiet yet laced with the unyielding conviction that had carried her through her testimony. Naomi squeezed her hand in response, feeling the warmth of Amara's skin fortify her resolve. She knew in her heart that her daughter's innocent truths had pierced through the layers of skepticism surrounding them. From the bench, Mr. Owens continued his crusade, a valiant defender weaving together the patchwork of filings, testimonies, and records that underscored Naomi's diligence rather than deceit. Clearing his throat, he turned to the jury, their expressions now mingling curiosity with empathy. "What Amara told us today offers a critical perspective," Mr. Owens asserted, his voice steady, each word a beacon honoring the narrative disruption wrought by Amara's cameo. "These communications, now part of the record, establish a chain of honesty and diligence notably absent for prosecution claims." He handed the documents to the court clerk, watching each page absorb into the ledger of justice, a ledger where Naomi's name began its emergence from beneath the indelible ink of accusation. He glanced first at Naomi, then to Amara, bolstered by their shared courage. Beside Mr. Hargrove, the prosecutor, a bundle of nerves hid beneath his calm exterior. He poised himself for a counterattack but hesitated, the force of Amara's testimony lingering like an unwavering specter that reshaped the taut logic underpinning his case. He glanced at the jury, reading a subtle shift in perception, a softened distrust read-eye-looting in Amara's wake. The judge, a gray-haired overseer with a steely focus sharpened by years of dispensing law, shifted his gaze from the defense's array into the soul-searching depths of Naomi's eyes. There he saw no cunning or guilt, but rather the weary vigilance of a woman pinned into desperation by systemic misjudgment. "This court acknowledges the introduction of these documents," the judge announced, adjusting his glasses with a determined clarity. Behind the reserved demeanor lay an acknowledgement of the undertow Amara's words had created. "We will recess for deliberation." Amid hushed whispers and the scraping of bench against floor, the courtroom emptied. Naomi rose, her apprehension gently tempered by hope forged from an unexpected source, her daughter. Outside the sunlit corridors, the echoes of previous judgments held vigil in stark recesses. Naomi felt the eyes of old portraits, past figures of justice, observing as she walked hand in hand with her daughter, gathering strength for the final act yet to unfold. Once secluded in the recess lounge, Mr. Owens gathered their fractured emotions, his collected demeanor reassuring. "Naomi, they've heard the truth," he said, a warm smile touching his lips. "Amara's words cut to the essence today. That's something even the shrewdest legal mind can't refute." Naomi nodded, eyes misting with sincerity. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. I don't know what we would have done without you, and without Amara." Meanwhile, Amara sat quietly, sketching invisible patterns on the wooden tabletop, a child's meditation before witnessing the grown-up world contort and untwist at the core of right and wrong. The tension of waiting drew the minutes into elongated breaths, each tick of the clock a synchronous heartbeat within a cocoon of anxious anticipation. When the courtroom resettled, Naomi took her place beside Mr. Owens with renewed determination. A hush descended as the jury filed in. Their collective aura, once formalized by distance, now seemed interwoven with Naomi's and Amara's story, a storyline improvised in harmonies rather than staccato judgments. The forewoman, a composed elder with weathered hands, stood with a visibility anchored in fairness. She announced the verdict, her voice carrying the significance of bridged fates. "In the case of the state versus Naomi Bennett, we find the defendant not guilty." For a moment, silence reigned supreme. Then, reality tumbled into consciousness in a wave of disbelief and relief. Naomi's breath escaped in a cascade of joy, her spirit exhaling the miseries born in silence. Amara cheered, her jubilant laughter melding with Naomi's tears as they enveloped each other, basking in a united light of vindication. Mr. Owens congratulated them, his commitment etched in the happy ruin of his relieved expression. "Amara," he remarked, kneeling to her eye level, "you saved the day. Your courage changed everything." Amara, vibrant under the glow of triumph, graced his shoulders with a hug, human gratitude extending beyond spoken language. "Mama taught me about courage," she replied, her voice a whisper swathed in pride shades. Beyond the courtroom, outside in the real world, the news of Naomi's exoneration flitted across channels and whispers. Oakville had watched an extraordinary narrative unfold, one where social headlines bowed before a child's unswerving honesty. Naomi stepped into the sunlight, shielded no longer by shadows of unmerited allegations. Each step she took beside Amara was a legacy of resilience and a community tradition and respect for truth. Together, they navigated roads framed by renewed possibilities, Naomi's integrity luminous anew under the sun of shared tomorrows. Through the heart of lived experiences and the wisdom nurtured within familial bonds, Amara had handed her mother the greatest gift, redemption, inscribed with the ink of hope and truth. And in doing so, she sowed seeds in Oakville that would blossom into deeper dialogues about justice, community, and shared humanities anchoring in every individual's delicate truths. As the courtroom resumed its deliberate rhythm, Naomi felt a faint flicker inside, a small flame of hope warding off the shadows that had lingered for months. Her heart swelled with pride as her daughter returned to her seat, the remnants of Amara's testimony cascading through the room like ripples on a pond. Though Naomi's fate still teetered in uncertainty, the shift was palpable, as if whispered truths now danced within the echoes of Amara's words. Amara leaned into Naomi, her small hand finding refuge in her mother's. "We're going to be okay, Mama," she whispered, her voice quiet yet laced with the unyielding conviction that had carried her through her testimony. Naomi squeezed her hand in response, feeling the warmth of Amara's skin fortify her resolve. She knew in her heart that her daughter's innocent truths had pierced through the layers of skepticism surrounding them. From the bench, Mr. Owens continued his crusade, a valiant defender weaving together the patchwork of filings, testimonies, and records that underscored Naomi's diligence rather than deceit. Clearing his throat, he turned to the jury, their expressions now mingling curiosity with empathy. "What Amara told us today offers a critical perspective," Mr. Owens asserted, his voice steady, each word a beacon honoring the narrative disruption wrought by Amara's cameo. "These communications, now part of the record, establish a chain of honesty and diligence notably absent for prosecution claims." He handed the documents to the court clerk, watching each page absorb into the ledger of justice, a ledger where Naomi's name began its emergence from beneath the indelible ink of accusation. He glanced first at Naomi, then to Amara, bolstered by their shared courage. Beside Mr. Hargrove, the prosecutor, a bundle of nerves hid beneath his calm exterior. He poised himself for a counterattack but hesitated, the force of Amara's testimony lingering like an unwavering specter that reshaped the taut logic underpinning his case. He glanced at the jury, reading a subtle shift in perception, a softened distrust read-eye-looting in Amara's wake. The judge, a gray-haired overseer with a steely focus sharpened by years of dispensing law, shifted his gaze from the defense's array into the soul-searching depths of Naomi's eyes. There, he saw no cunning or guilt, but rather the weary vigilance of a woman pinned into desperation by systemic misjudgment. "This court acknowledges the introduction of these documents," the judge announced, adjusting his glasses with a determined clarity. Behind the reserved demeanor lay an acknowledgement of the undertow Amara's words had created. "We will recess for deliberation." Amid hushed whispers and the scraping of bench against floor, the courtroom emptied. Naomi rose, her apprehension gently tempered by hope forged from an unexpected source, her daughter. Outside the sunlit corridors, the echoes of previous judgments held vigil in stark recesses. Naomi felt the eyes of old portraits, past figures of justice, observing as she walked hand in hand with her daughter, gathering strength for the final act yet to unfold. Once secluded in the recess lounge, Mr. Owens gathered their fractured emotions, his collected demeanor reassuring. "Naomi, they've heard the truth," he said, a warm smile touching his lips. "Amara's words cut to the essence today. That's something even the shrewdest legal mind can't refute." Naomi nodded, eyes misting with sincerity. "Thank you, Mr. Owens. I don't know what we would have done without you, and without Amara." Meanwhile, Amara sat quietly, sketching invisible patterns on the wooden tabletop, a child's meditation before witnessing the grown-up world contort and untwist at the core of right and wrong. The tension of waiting drew the minutes into elongated breaths, each tick of the clock a synchronous heartbeat within a cocoon of anxious anticipation. When the courtroom resettled, Naomi took her place beside Mr. Owens with renewed determination. A hush descended as the jury filed in. Their collective aura, once formalized by distance, now seemed interwoven with Naomi's and Amara's story, a storyline improvised in harmonies rather than staccato judgments. The forewoman, a composed elder with weathered hands, stood with a visibility anchored in fairness. She announced the verdict, her voice carrying the significance of bridged fates. "In the case of the state versus Naomi Bennett, we find the defendant not guilty." For a moment, silence reigned supreme. Then, reality tumbled into consciousness in a wave of disbelief and relief. Naomi's breath escaped in a cascade of joy, her spirit exhaling the miseries born in silence. Amara's heart burst with happiness, her jubilant laughter melding with Naomi's tears as they enveloped each other, basking in the united light of vindication. The others in the courtroom clapped quietly, a ripple of kindred human triumph encapsulating the space. This wasn't just a legal battle, Mr. Owens confided to Naomi and Amara, his gratitude beyond formalities. This was justice paved by belief and carried by truth. Amara, vibrant under the glow of triumph, graced his shoulders with a hug, human gratitude extending beyond spoken language. "Mama taught me about courage," she replied, her voice a whisper swathed in pride shades. His smile broadened. "And today, you taught us all." Beyond the courtroom, outside in the real world, the news of Naomi's exoneration flitted across channels and whispers. Oakville had watched an extraordinary narrative unfold, one where social headlines bowed before a child's unswerving honesty. Naomi stepped into the sunlight, shielded no longer by shadows of unmerited allegations. Each step she took beside Amara was a legacy of resilience and a community traditioned in respect for truth. Together, they navigated roads framed by renewed possibilities, Naomi's integrity luminous anew under the sun of shared tomorrows. Through the heart of lived experiences and the wisdom nurtured within familial bonds, Amara had handed her mother the greatest gift, redemption, inscribed with the ink of hope and truth. And in doing so, she sowed seeds in Oakville that would blossom into deeper dialogues about justice, community, and shared humanities anchoring in every individual's delicate truths. The verdict reverberated throughout Oakville, a seismic shift resonating in what had been historically reserved and isolated community. The whispers of justice attained and barriers transcended spread like wildfire, igniting conversations in spaces previously silent on matters of fairness and equity. Naomi and Amara's journey through the minefields of accusation to the bloom of acquittal became a beacon, casting light upon long-standing taboos and encouraging reform at grassroots and institutional levels. The bright summer sun bathed Oakville in warmth, a fitting contrast to the months of shadowed uncertainty that Naomi had endured. As she and Amara emerged from the shadows of the courthouse, the town seemed to welcome them back with new eyes. They were not merely returning home but stepping into a community awakened to deeper realities, those spoken softly by a child courageously echoing across societal landscapes. Neighbors who had once regarded Naomi with suspicion now greeted her with a respect born of newfound understanding. Their front porch, once a place of anxiety and whispered judgments, now turned into a gathering place for empathetic exchanges and communal support. In the park where Amara played after school, parents who once avoided eye contact now approached Naomi, engaging her in conversation, extending friendship where there had been none before. "Naomi, so glad to see you," Mrs. Jenkins, a woman known for her practicality and reticent demeanor, offered one afternoon, approaching Naomi as they watched their children play. Her voice carried an unfamiliar warmth. Amara was incredible. She reminded us all of what truly matters. Naomi, her heart swelling with gratitude, nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins." It wasn't easy, but knowing the truth had a chance to be heard made all the difference. Amara, nearby on the swings, pumped her legs harder, soaring higher with each arc, her laughter floating on the breeze. She was blissfully aware of her impact but unencumbered by it, as childhood embraced her once again in its simple joys. The storytelling of Naomi's trial became a narrative catalyst within Oakville, prompting meaningful explorations into systemic challenges local residents had quietly faced for years. Church meetings, community hall gatherings, and school board assemblies took on a new vigor, animated by ideals of justice and the necessity for every voice to be heard, championed by a small girl speaking big truths. Reverend James, an influential figure in town, seized on the momentum as he addressed his congregation one Sunday morning beneath the vaulted beams of the old church. His voice resonated with a spirited determination. Amara Bennett reminded us that truth doesn't belong only to the powerful. This community must become vessels for justice, in our schools, our businesses, and our hearts. The congregation hummed with an enthusiastic acknowledgement, eyes bright with possibilities. The school principal, Mrs. Alvarez, inspired by Amara's role in her mother's exoneration, introduced programs championing student voices, emphasizing civic engagement and critical thinking while encouraging young minds to question, to learn, and to advocate. One day, Mrs. Alvarez approached Naomi and asked if Amara would share her story during an assembly aimed at inspiring students. "Amara has something invaluable to teach us all," she said, shaking Naomi's hand warmly. Naomi agreed, seeing it as a chance for Amara to embrace her voice under brighter, nurturing lights. On the appointed day, Amara stood confidently on stage before her school, her form framed by the sun streaming through high windows. The whispers among the students petered out, replaced by the expectant hush of curiosity about their peers' experience. Amara, growing accustomed to owning her narrative, spoke not of courtrooms but of what her story's legacy had gifted her, the belief in herself and her community. Being heard gives you the strength to change things, Amara told her audience, her voice clear yet gentle. Each of us has a truth that matters. When we share and listen to these truths, we create something powerful, something just. The children's applause was genuine and invigorating, a fresh energy rising through the school where ideas and stories no longer belonged solely to textbooks but grew vibrantly within each student's reach. Families throughout Oakville felt empowered to address their own stories. Town meetings overflowed with discussions about fairness, educational equality, and community safety. Initiatives sparked from Amara's one-time stand to honor integrity led to locally raised legal funds to support community members facing unjust legal accusations, ensuring no one felt isolated or powerless against cumbersome legal systems. Naomi was no longer the figure of a wrongful accusation, but a testament to the resilience and love nurtured within familial bonds. Sharing her story in various forums, she became a voice alongside others advocating broader systemic change, a leader in community dialogues aimed at justice reform and inclusivity. One evening, as Naomi and Amara walked home beneath a dusk-painted sky, Naomi's thoughts meandered through memories freshly cast in renewed light. She glanced at her daughter, who remained tethered to the simple wonders of childhood, even amidst her tribute to profound wisdom. Amara had forged a path not only for Naomi's redemption but for a community's awakening. "You know, Amara," Naomi began, her voice resonant with affection, "you taught Oakville more than any adult could." Amara smiled, a mix of modesty and revelation. "I just spoke up, Mama. And because of that," Naomi continued, squeezing her daughter's hand, "you helped change everything for all of us." The dusk wrapped around them like a cloak of quiet triumph, their steps homeward definitive against Oakville's roads that now gleamed with potential illustrations of fairness drawn from truth's palette. The village around them, albeit small in size, felt vastly enriched by narratives of mutual trust and shared futures. Amara's wisdom had gifted Oakville a legacy, a testament to what a single voice, young and unyielded, could inspire. As Oakville shed the remnants of its shadows after the trying months of Naomi's trial, the town slowly transitioned, much like the gradual shift from twilight to dawn. For Naomi and Amara Bennett, life resumed its course not only with the simplicity of daily routines, but enriched by the profound changes their story had etched into their community's fabric. The day following the trial, the first respite from their tribulations came with the sun, its beams draping warm fingers over their modest apartment. Naomi awakened to the golden-hued comfort of hope, an unfamiliar yet supremely welcoming guest. She allowed herself a moment to breathe deeply, absorbing the silence filled not with anxiety's familiar notes but a budding sense of peace. As Amara bounded into the living room, her energy almost tangible, Naomi found herself awash with gratitude. It wasn't just freedom regained, but the extraordinary gift of witnessing her daughter's unfaltering spirit. Amara, in her innocence melded with wisdom, had turned the tides of their fate. "Good morning, Mama," Amara chirped, planting a quick kiss on Naomi's cheek. Her hair was as untamed as her dreams, a cascade of curls defying her mother's attempts to tame them with their usual pink ribbons. "Good morning, my shining star," Naomi replied, ruffling her daughter's hair. They shared a conspiratorial smile, the kind that passes unspoken promises and myriad stories between mothers and daughters. The neighbors, warming to Naomi as she walked Amara to the school bus stop, sent waves and smiles. Their previous hesitations were replaced with curiosity and respect. Mrs. Carter, standing on her porch with her morning tea, waved Naomi over. "Join me for tea tomorrow, Naomi," she called, her invitation edged with genuine interest. "I've realized we have much to talk about." Naomi nodded, touched by the olive branch. "I'd love that." A knowing glance passed between them, signaling the start of newfound friendships and conversations far overdue. As Amara settled into her familiar school routine, whispers of her courtroom courage wove through school halls like threads in a tapestry. To her classmates, she was more than just Amara Bennett. She was a trailblazer, the embodiment of fearless truth. She navigated this newfound attention with grace, focusing her energy not on the acclaim but on her studies and play. Mrs. Alvarez, true to her promise, organized an assembly where Amara could speak, even briefly, to her peers. The assembly hall, a bastion of echoing voices and half-whispered conversations, hushed as Amara stepped forward. Her figure, framed stoically against the backdrop of eager faces, seemed to bridge the divide between child and sage. "I know some of you think what happened in that courtroom was big," Amara began, her voice steady yet tinged with the innocence of youth. Her words, though uncomplicated, resonated with an understanding of the vastness of one's truth. "But really, I just did what I knew I had to do. We all have a voice, and it's important to use it to help others and ourselves." Her peers sat rapt, the ripple of her message settling among them like gentle rain, each drop acknowledging their potential for bravery. As they applauded her off the stage, Amara returned to her seat, her heart lightened and her spirit lifted by the burgeoning camaraderie. Later, as twilight painted the sky a mix of pink and orange hues, Naomi and Amara journeyed home. Their path, a familiar route that felt immeasurably altered, was lined with vibrant flora that seemed to nod in agreement with the sense of renewal around them. Their quiet street now buzzed subtly with a sense of community, united in progressive thought. Gone were the whispers of suspicion that once thrived in the shadows, replaced instead by lively discussions, spontaneous gatherings on porches, and the vivid laughter of renewed bonds. At home, Naomi prepared a simple dinner, the sense of comfort food weaving through their kitchen. As the kettle on the stove began to hum, signaling the promise of warm herbal tea, Naomi reflected on how the relationship between them and their community had evolved. "Do you think there's more we can do, Mama?" Amara asked, twirling the hem of her apron, her face etched with earnest intent. Naomi paused, savoring the ordinary and extraordinary nature of the question. "I think we've already started something beautiful, Amara," she replied thoughtfully. "It's about continuing those conversations and inspiring change within our hearts and our town." The two spent that evening crafting their visions for Oakville and beyond, not dreams built on extraordinary ambitions, but goals grounded in empathy, fairness, and advocacy. It was Naomi's story, as much as it was Amara's resolve, that would continue to instigate transformations. Sunday found Naomi speaking at the community's newest initiative, a forum designed to address injustices and offer support to those similarly afflicted. Her voice, calm and resonant, articulated their journey and the continuous fight for justice. Faces familiar and new mirrored her conviction, all inspired by the persistence of truth and the innocent bravery of a child's declaration. Naomi, having embodied the spirit of determination, drew from Amara's resolve and seamlessly transitioned into a leadership role. Friends old and new surrounded her, bolstering her efforts and echoing her sentiments for reform. At the local church, Reverend James continued to galvanize support for broader inclusivity, his sermons infused with optimism and tempered with realistic goals for community upliftment. As Naomi and Amara tucked themselves in that night, their hearts felt immense with the world of possibilities they continued to foster. Their journey had marked a turning point, not just for Naomi's redemption, but a shared societal awakening that spread far beyond personal vindication. Amara once again spoke up, this time under the comforting blanket of night and assurance of her mother's presence. "We've done so much already, haven't we, Mama?" she ventured, snuggling closer. "We have indeed, Amara," Naomi affirmed, soothing her child with gentle strokes of her hair. "And thanks to you, we've changed things for the better." Under the canopy of a sky glimmering with stars, each one flickering to the rhythm of their endeavors, Naomi and Amara found solace. A chapter closed with promises of new narratives, yet to be discovered but crucially entwined with voices raised for justice. Theirs was a story not just of struggle, but of a vibrant legacy that would inspire future generations to champion the truth and enact change, one brave voice at a time.